In this video, I will be explaining the difference between two categories of copyright protection, namely a work and a published edition. Through this discussion, you will begin to see how these differences may affect copyright ownership and interests of a copyrighted item. The main differences between an original work and a published edition are 1. The types of subject matter within which the copyright protection subsists. 2. The parties who can have ownership over the copyrighted subject matter. 3. The duration of each copyright protection. And 4. The rights afforded by each type of copyright protection and their necessary grounds for infringement. So firstly, we will discuss subsistence. According to Section 32 of the Copyright Act, copyright subsists in an original work where the subject matter of the work is literary, dramatic, musical, or artistic. However, when it comes to a published edition, Section 92 of the Copyright Act simply states that copyright subsists in a published edition of a literary, dramatic, musical, or artistic work. So what does this mean exactly? This category of protection was discussed in the case of Nationwide News Proprietary Limited and Copyright Agency Limited. The federal court in this case stated that published edition copyright protects the presentation embodied in the edition. They also went on to say that this included typographical layout, juxtaposition of text and photographs, and the use of headlines. So therefore, a book publisher who re-releases a new edition of Shakespeare's Romeo and Juliet will have copyright protection in the way the new edition is presented, even though the copyright protection in the actual content of the play has long since expired. Now we will move on to ownership. Section 35, subsection 2 of the Copyright Act states that the author of an original work is the owner of any copyright subsisting in that work. However, there are exceptions to this general rule, which include situations where works are produced in the course of employment and where artwork has been commissioned. Copyright in original works may also be excluded or modified by agreement, and this is called an assignment. A real-life example of this is where a recording artist transfers copyright in their scored music to their recording company under the terms of their contract. Ownership in terms of a published edition is much simpler. Section 100 of the Copyright Act states that the owner of a copyright in a published edition is simply the publisher. Now onto duration. The duration of each protection differs, with copyright in original works lasting the life of the author plus 70 years, whereas published edition copyright lasts 25 years from the date of publication. Lastly, we'll explore the difference in the rights afforded by each category of copyright and their grounds for infringement. Under Section 31, subsection 1 of the Copyright Act, the owner of an original work has the exclusive right to reproduce the work in material form, to publish the work, to perform the work in public, to communicate the work to the public, and to make an adaptation of the work. When it comes to the basis for infringement of an original work, this occurs when any of the exclusive rights are exercised by someone other than the owner. Published edition copyright, on the other hand, involves quite restricted rights, in that the owner is only allowed to make a facsimile copy of the edition. And when it comes to infringement of this category, the court in Nationwide News and Copyright Agency stated that a substantial part of the edition must be copied, and that the intention behind the copying must be to capture the presentation of the edition rather than the content of the edition. Overall, the differences between the copyright protection afforded to original works and published editions are pretty substantial. To recap, these differences are subsistence, ownership, duration, and the rights and grounds for infringement.
Created using Powtoon.